and not a penny of it is being contributed by people who drive on the roads, 40% of the drivers who live somewhere else.
When we talk about the ways in which we're going to collect these tolls, and you say that we haven't really figured that out yet, what will be the process to figure that out, and how long do you think that will take?
Well, we're going to ask the staff, if the City Council approves of the direction that I'm sending, don't forget, I have to get the votes to even refer this off to staff to say, yes, we want to pursue this option. We will ask our staff, the city staff, to then come back with a report that goes into the technology and what should the toll be, and should it be flat rate versus distance, and, should there be off-peak hour discounts, and so on and so on. And they will come back with their recommendations as to what would be fairest and most effective on that. And I certainly would hope that information could be available by sometime early in the new year, so we can move forward with this and actually then begin to put it in place and collect the money, just because we got to build the transit. The traffic, as I repeated, it's a nightmare. You know this. You hear about it every day here.
Let me bring Matthew in. Matthew, you feel the mayor needs to get his priorities straight.
Unfortunately, he's too much a disciple of Bill Davis, who gave us this mess to begin with.
Unfortunately, Matthew, you need to get your cell phone straight, because I can't hear a damn word you're saying. But he's basically saying that, you've got park here, you've got this there, that you need to get your priorities straight.
My priorities are clear, Ryan.
Okay.
I've said transit and housing are the top priorities, and other kinds of infrastructure like the Portlands and the long-term care. We'll do the park too. I hope to get the private sector, as they did in Chicago and elsewhere, to make a very substantial contribution to building that park, and that park will get done because that needs to get done for the tens of thousands of people who live downtown.
If we can get the private sector on board for a park, why can't we get them on board for fixing our highways and investing in transit?
Well, when you say that, do you want them to own it? Because they're not going to do it as a charity measure. I mean, I'm quite happy to involve the private sector in a partnership to get these highways built, because they'll build it on time and on budget. But I think people want those roads to be kept in public ownership. And when the private sector comes in with their money, there's this kind of misapprehension that somehow that money is free. When the private sector puts money in, they either want to own it or they want to have their money paid back with interest. There's no free money from the private sector. This is the stuff that Doug Ford peddles, that there's private sector money out there as if it's free.
Okay, then
they want a return on that.
What would the exchange be then if they're investing in a park? I mean, are they owning the park?
No, in the case of people in Chicago and Millennium Park, $500 million, I believe, is the number that was put into that park, and they did it as a public-spirited gesture in return for a small plaque over in the corner saying such and such a company contributed to this park, and rich people did too. Just like the Matthews family, Will and Judy Matthews contributed $25 million to the City of Toronto to build the park underneath the Gardiner that will open next year. They gave it, no strings attached.
Well, then that sounds like free money. Why couldn't they do the same thing for highways or transit?
Oh, come on. Do you think there's a lot of people that are going to step up and build part of a repairs to the Gardiner with their personal money? I don't think so.
I'm just saying, I mean, if there are people who care about this city that have very deep pockets. I'm happy to put the invitation out.
I don't think there'll be a lot of takers. I think there'll be takers for a park, takers for an art gallery, takers for a hospital. I don't think we'll have it for a road or for a transit line. And if it's money coming from the private sector, they will expect a return on that, meaning interest on their money and want it back, or they'll want to own the transit line, which I think a lot of people have some trouble with.
I'm certainly not telling rich people how to spend their money, but it sounds like their priorities are out of whack. If they're going to put money into parks and art galleries, when we have transit that's bleeding and we have highways that are crumbling, then perhaps they should be redirecting those funds. But again, that's their cash. It's time for the round table. Christy Blatchford is here from the National Post. Bill Carroll joins us, our morning man at CFRA in Ottawa. It seems, guys, this is what everybody is talking about this afternoon. So, Christy, we'll start with you. You've had some time to reflect since the morning show. Have your opinions changed based on what you've heard today when it comes to road tolls?
No. I think we have to understand and accept that we have to pay for the things that we didn't pay for many years, that we have to pay for everything in a big city. Nothing is free, as I think the mayor said at some point today. Nothing is free. We're going to have to pay for it. The question is, how do you want to pay for it? Maybe you can increase property taxes on the City of Toronto. I gather that our property taxes are still much lower than they are in the 905, so that's possible. You look at that. But you also have to look at road tolls. I mean, it's going to be a user pay world. It's the only way the world will work, our world.
Bill Carroll?
Well, as a very smart man who was running for mayor once said, I'm just going to use the other roads. When I'm coming into town, which I do about once a month, I'll avoid the Don Valley Parkway, and I'll take Bayview or I'll take Leslie, and you'll just cause congestion. That very smart man was Mr. John Tory. Well, you're strapping on the big boy ones today, huh? You've decided to do that, and I thought you were unbeatable in the next election as mayor, but now, you're going to have to fight an election on this one. It's going to be a tough one.
That'll teach you, Mr. Tory, to do the right thing and speak the truth, unpalatable as it is.
Well, let's address that then. You did say it. We've addressed this a little bit on the show. The idea of those arterial routes, does that concern you at all?
My objective, again, let's go back to why we're putting these road tolls on. It's not to sort of have fun or to create controversy or create reasons that it'll make it tougher in the next election. The next election doesn't matter. But we're doing it to pay for transit. And my hope is that a lot of people who presently use their cars will use neither Bayview Avenue or Leslie or the Parkway, but will use public transit to get around, because that's the future of a city whose population is going from 3 million to 6 million in the next number of years. We know that. And if we just think everybody's going to drive their car around and have good traffic anywhere by doing nothing.
But John, if you think 3 million more people are all going to be on the TTC, that's fantasy as well, right? More people are going to drive. Many of the people who do drive now will still drive. And it's not your fault. I don't know who we blame, but we messed up public transit from the beginning in this city. We don't have a network of subways like we should have had. Now they're expensive to build. But, part of the reality is you're going to make day-to-day life very expensive for people living in Toronto. Now, you said 40% of the people that use those roads come from elsewhere. So you want somebody else to pay.
I want the somebody else bill. I only want the somebody else who's using the roads City of Toronto taxpayers pay for to pay a small share. That's all.
Fair enough, but 60% of the people are already Toronto taxpayers. Now they're going to have to pay for that road. You said if you use private dollars, then we don't own it anymore. What's the point of owning it if we have to pay to use it every day? One way or the other, we pay to use it.
Bill, we're asking
but let me
the people.
Finish.
Okay.
Why not insist that the province kick in more money for for our infrastructure?
Insist.
The city of
what am I
Toronto.
going to do? Stomp my feet and throw my shoes?
You have to. Yes, help
I
get
do
rid
it
of this
every
government.
day. But I mean,
and also the federal government they're pushing aside their responsibilities in these things as well now with infrastructure.
You're singing my song, but I mean, am I supposed to, in the meantime, when they don't cough up the checks, just say, fine, then we just won't build transit?
No, but I think you're better off to lay the blame at their feet, because this is going to cost you the election, and you're a good mayor. But
it is not going to cost me the election.
And
look, if I lose the election standing up for the need to be honest with people and build transit and have a plan and specify how you're going to pay for it, then so be it. I mean, because
you have been down that road before.
Yeah. Well,
why is it always on the backs of the drivers, though? Why don't we find other ways to fund it? Why
well,
not,
like who? Property taxpayers? How about them?
Let me
transit.
I want to get
pay
Christy
more
in
for
here.
Transit.
Christy,
we want to build no transit. Let them pay for it.
I heard that sigh. Christy?
Well, just because I think we're arguing stupid stuff. The fact is, the money has to come from somewhere. It either comes from property tax or some other revenue tool, or it comes from tolls. And I think we're trying, and probably property tax will have to go up as well at some point. Things cost money to run. Honestly, I'm in favor, mind you, of a user fee for people like me to use it to see a doctor. We have, the healthcare system's broken, busted too. Nobody wants to hear it.
But Christy, it's fundamentally dishonest. When we used to have
What's
taxes,
dishonest?
It's dishonest because what cities do, we just did it here in Ottawa as well. The mayor bragged about keeping the property tax increase to 2%. What he didn't talk about is if you added in all of the other increases and all of the user fees, it's 50% more than that. And it's a way of saying, at least let's have an honest discussion and say, this is what it costs to run the city of Toronto, and not make one group of people pay more than others. Because the reality is, even if you use public transit, you're on the roads as well. You're using the roads as well. Do we want to discourage business from setting up in Toronto because of the cost that it costs their employees to drive into the city?
These are very tricky lines, very fine balancing acts, and they don't lend themselves, I'm afraid, to discussions like ours. I have actually, not in recent years, but I have actually covered budget committee meetings and city council meetings where politicians try and figure this stuff out. And it isn't as easy as we would wish it to be. And I think that the mayor, and my bias is always for him, I declare that straight up, but I think he has shown genuine leadership and some considerable nuts in telling people the unattractive truth. And
is that nuts as in being nuts or the other?
No, balls. I was trying to be delicate.
I just clarifying that.
Well, let's check.
You just wanted me to say it.
I did.
Maybe a little of both today, John. Maybe a little of each.
You're listening to this intently as Christy and Bill go back and forth. What's going through your head?
I'll be honest with you, because Bill is a person I've known for many years, and I'm surprised that he's transfixed by the notion that I'm going to lose the next election and that's the most important thing, which I'm not going to do, but that's important as opposed to having the courage to stand up and say we've got to build transit so we can fix traffic, and that we've got to be honest with people for the first time in decades as to how we're going to pay for it and actually get on with paying for it and building it. And that's what people should be focused on. That's what's called leadership, and that's a plan. And I think people will vote overwhelmingly for that in 2 years because they're tired of the old way, which was the real dishonesty bill.
Well, we'll see. But I think when you add that to the hydro bills people are paying, and that everyday life has become so expensive for working people, many of whom rely on their cars, I think it's a very risky way to go. Maybe it is the right way. Christy's right. We don't have the advantage of doing it as our full-time job and sitting in those budget meetings day in and day out. Maybe this is the only answer. But I think Bill, if you make the priority to punish people who drive cars further, you're taking a big
That isn't. It's like the war on Christmas. It never happened. There is no war on the car.
And Bill, how does it punish somebody, for example, from the 905, who's paying nothing to ride on a road that the Toronto city taxpayers are going to pay $3 billion to keep up? How is that punishment? I just call that fairness.
Simple. It's not that simple either. You know that. Those people in the 905, they pay higher municipal taxes. They also pay provincial taxes and federal taxes, and that some of that money gets channeled into Toronto. It's just not as simple as that.
Bill, I would also say you're falling into the trap that a lot of people are putting out there. They're saying, the province of Ontario is more expensive. Hydro rates have gone up. That's not the mayor's fault. That's not the city of Toronto's fault. It doesn't mean because Kathleen Wynne and her government can't. Hold on a second. Let me finish for a second. It doesn't mean because Kathleen Wynne and her government can't run this province properly that the mayor of Toronto and the city should just stall all their projects and not do anything.
No, but there are a lot of people in this country waiting for one of their leaders at one of the three levels of government to say, ordinary people can't afford to pay more right now. So
Bill,
what are we going to do about that?
When I kept property taxes to the rate of inflation or below and was heavily and continue to be heavily criticized for it, that's precisely what I had in mind, is that older people especially and younger people for whom the biggest single check they write every year is their property tax check to the City of Toronto will have some degree of understanding that I will be keeping that increase to the rate of inflation or below, which last year was 1.6%.
Yeah, but you do that at the cost of user fees. So it's fundamentally dishonest.
Oh, and by the way...
User fees just make people pay who are using something, and those who don't use don't pay.
Christy?
I was just going to say, I think the real test of what kind of actual move this is in the quality of the reaction it gets. And if this decision to put tolls on roads is, as he said it was, the deciding factor for Doug Ford to make a run for something, he's not clear what, then it is a good move. That's all. You, in other words, you can judge what you do by the political opponents, by the enemies you make, and I think that is a splendid achievement.
Mr. Mayor, we'll give you the closing statement on this.
Well, I have a question for Bill, which is He's not going to use road tolls. How would he pay for the transit? Because I assume he thinks we have to build it. But let me just say, look, as for Mr. Ford and his plans, I mean, he's consumed by political ambition. And I have a job already, and according to Bill and others, he's not alone in saying that this is going to put me in trouble in the next election. So that just proves I'm trying to do the right thing. Because if I was really as consumed as Mr. Ford is at getting myself elected and reelected, and had an obsession with becoming and being a politician, I guess I wouldn't bother to do the right thing. I'd just do things that were popular.
That's what I was trying to say.
I think you've always been consumed with public service, and I believe you're trying to do the right thing here. I'm saying it's a political risk. You can't disagree with me on that.
No, I don't. I don't. Bill, there's a political risk in everything you do.
Of course.
Yeah. But I agree totally with you.
I just wish, and I would stand by your side, if we got to fight harder with the provincial government and the federal government for them to kick in more, because Canada needs Toronto. It's the most important city, and the people who live in Toronto can't afford to carry it all by themselves.
Bill Carroll.
Here. I like that.
Bill Carroll, Christy Blatchford, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor John Tory, thank you so much for taking all the slings, arrows, and barbs.
Anytime. Look, it's part of the job, and I understand there's always healthy debate about these things, but we've got to get ahead with building transit. If people have better ideas on how to do it other than through road tolls, I'm all ears, but I just have made what I think is the best, responsible, and fairest choice that is available.